So this is the most pirated games in April 2017. Keep in mind that this chart is for informational and educational purposes only, and if you like it, support the developers and buy it when it is a fair price. Now, number 1 is The Sims 4 City Living. Don't care. Let's move on to number 2.
Exactly.
Outlast 2 is at number 2. This is actually a new release. I find the trouble with Outlast 2 is that it's been thoroughly beaten at its own game by the likes of Resident Evil 7. Mass Effect Andromeda is at number 3. I should point out this was just cracked too late to to be included rather in last month's charts. It was just cracked at the very beginning of April. They did a Conspiracy, I believe this was, did a really quick job of it. So between about the 4th and the 10th of April, there's this really weird circle jerk amongst all the video gaming sites. Just to explain, the video gaming sites' MO is to copy the news from each other. So when one of them does a story,
everyone does a story.
They all do the same story.
Just copy and paste and change a few words up.
Yeah, that's it. There you go. You could be a games journalist, Matthew. You've got it. You've just passed the exam. So they all did this weird circle jerk between the 4th and the 10th of April, saying pirates don't get the latest Mass Effect Andromeda
laughing in their faces like, haha, you don't get the latest patch.
Yeah, the tone of a lot of the articles was a very sort of smug, hand-wringy, well, you're not going to get the facial animation patch. Because if you don't know, Mass Effect Andromeda has really bad facial animation. We actually really like the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent game. I mean,
we reviewed it. We gave it, was it 86%?
86%, yeah.
Although the facial animation is distracting, it's not a deal breaker. The game,
absolutely not.
The game is actually fundamentally good and the story is quite good too.
I didn't actually notice a massive improvement, or as massive improvement as they seem to be making out from before the patch, to be honest.
Yeah, but the weird thing about this story is, so after all of the game sites posted this really hand-wringing, smarmy story saying pirates aren't going to get the latest patch, the reason they said the pirates aren't going to get the latest patch is because it uses the latest version of Denuvo. Basically, EA put in a later version of Denuvo to make it more difficult to crack. But what that completely failed to appreciate, first of all, is that, number 1, the release groups, generally speaking, don't waste their time cracking patches of things when the initial cracked version is perfectly functional, which the initial version of Mass Effect Andromeda absolutely is. As we said, the facial animations aren't really that big of a deal. I mean, yes, they're funny, but they don't really affect the game. And second of all, it completely misses the whole point of piracy, because with piracy, the idea is choice. You can, if you want the latest patches and you want the online and you want the facial animation, you buy a copy from Origin or from a shop. If you want to see what the game is like and you're not bothered about the latest patches and you don't want Denuvo shitware, then there is the cracked version. So that's problem number 1. But problem number 2 is that very shortly afterwards, in fact on the 13th of April, a game that we're coming to later in the chart called Too Dark was cracked. Now this actually uses the latest version of Denuvo.
So the same one which Mass Effect Andromeda patch has, which they were laughing everyone's faces about, but couldn't
yeah,
be cracked.
Yeah, the one that they're saying, yeah, exactly, won't be cracked. Well, actually, it wasn't that much better than the last version of Denuvo.
3 days, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So, but as well, as I said, they're really not understanding how piracy works, because why would any of the release groups waste time re-cracking Mass Effect Andromeda when there's a whole load of other games, like Too Dark, for example, and there's still things like Nier Automata.
Because Mass Effect Andromeda is obviously such a massive game, it did take them slightly longer than, say, Resident Evil 7 to crack.
Yeah, and we do mean slightly.
Yeah, only slightly.
Slightly longer, yeah.
Not like... I mean,
like 6 months later, no, so it was slightly
instead
later.
of 3 days, it was more like 7 days, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, that was really bizarre. And I noticed as well that all of those same sites didn't then print a story saying, "Oh yeah, you know when we said that that latest version of Denuvo hasn't been cracked? Yeah, we were wrong. We were wrong. No. So we just like to point that out right here, right now. They were wrong." Number 4, we've got Pro Evolution Soccer 2017 as ever, and it will be as ever until FIFA gets cracked. Farming Simulator 2017 is the most boring entry at number 5. Number 6, actually, we've got a new entry, Little Nightmares. I believe this only had Steam DRM, so it was cracked pretty much upon release. We're probably going to get a review up of this soon, actually. I found it very disappointing. Especially compared to the likes of Inside and Limbo. Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 is at number 7, 8 GTA 5, number 9 Far Cry Primal, the Apex Edition, which I believe includes all of the DLC and extra crap that you get for pre-ordering and so forth, Season Pass and shite. And Watch Dogs 2 is at number 10. Just picking a few highlights. We've got the full chart in the description below. The whole top 25 actually. We've got The Witcher 3 at number 12, Resident Evil 7 at 13.
GTA San Andreas in there at number 15.
Yes.
Now that's getting on a bit now, isn't it?
Just Cause 3, which was only quite recently cracked, is at number 17, despite being a really old game. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the Wii U version with the Semu emulator, still in there at number 18. Syberia 3 at number 21. This is going to actually tie in with our next piracy news story, as is Too Dark, which is at number 23. Now, Too Dark we just mentioned with regards to the Mass Effect Andromeda story. This had the latest version of Denuvo. Now, Too Dark, if you don't know, is by one of the designers of Alone in the Dark, hence why it's got Dark in the title. This was actually a game that was that started life on Kickstarter. Now, most games, when they're on Kickstarter, because it's a developer-hunter relationship, you're giving money directly to the developer to make the game, there's usually an understanding, either expressed or implied, that it's going to release without DRM. And although the creators of Too Dark never actually said it was going to launch without DRM, it was kind of assumed by most people using the site, because normally it turns up on Good Old Games, which is always DRM free. But then it was announced shortly before release that they had paid a whole load of money to the parasites Denuvo to include their terrible DRM in the game, and this annoyed quite a lot of the people who had backed the game on Kickstarter. And this annoyed them for two main reasons, both of which are very valid. First of all, because lots of people had backed the game, and they may have been ideologically opposed to DRM, or Denuvo DRM in particular. They may not have wanted something like Denuvo, which does affect the performance of games.
The hard drive.
Exactly, yeah, allegations have been made about that. But valid reason number two is that the people who were contributing their hard-earned money on Kickstarter were doing so under the understanding that that money would be used to develop the game
and make the game better.
And exactly, so design, any of those things, paying developers, and instead they've taken a massive chunk, and I do mean a massive chunk of what they made on Kickstarter, so they can pay Denuvo to put the DRM into their game.
What a waste of money, though. As I always say.
And I should point out, they added Denuvo, as is always the case, because they're not the first people to do this. Several companies have done this now. They did this as a result of selling out to a developer. So they get the money they need on Kickstarter, and then they sell out to a developer, who then says, right, you've got to have Denuvo. Okay, boss, yeah, anything you like, boss. And there was a huge backlash, as you can imagine. Well, anyway, the Denuvo was cracked really, really quickly. 13th of April, I believe, the crack was made public. And then the publishers released a statement on the 19th of April, and they said, based on recent events and the sheer amount of community feedback, we've decided to remove Denuvo from Too Dark.
Recent events, it's getting cracked.
Now, why do I suspect that the recent events part of that had a lot more to do with the community feedback? If that had not been cracked, that game would still have Denuvo in right now.
Exactly, yeah.
They didn't give a damn about their community feedback. They couldn't have given a crap about that. But as soon as it was cracked, no, then it became a financial proposition. So that, okay, well, we better...
word risk carefully.
Yeah, we better remove it now so we can scrape some money back from Denuvo. Yeah, well, nice try, makers of Too Dark, but yeah, everyone could pretty much see what was going on there. Our final news story is Syberia 3. This again uses the latest version of Denuvo. It was cracked, how many? 3 days after release.
3 whole days. Well, I mean, no, 3 important days. I mean, that's
of course,
a lot of sales they gained from 3 days.
Of course, because you get millions of sales in those first days and then they just drop like a stone, or at least if you listen to the publishers who are trying to justify the sheer amount of money they spend on Denuvo. I should point out as well that the purchased version, the retail versions of Syberia 3, has also now had Denuvo removed from it by the publishers. So, yeah, this tends to be the pattern now.
There's a bit of a fairly big-ish release missing from the Pirates chart this month.
And what's that?
Ukulele, I thought, would be in there, since, I mean, it's Denuvo 3 as well, isn't it?
Really big release this month. Ukulele is one of these interesting ones. I mean, I'm going to tentatively compare it to No Man's Sky, in that there's a lot of really positive pre-release buzz.
And hype.
Yeah, a whole load of hype. Everyone's like, oh wow, it's going to be like one of those old fantastic 3D platformers, but with modern day standards, when actually what was released was a kind of bit of a really shoddily put together, boring. I was bored senseless by it. I was so bored by it. It feels like it's just been thrown together. There's absolutely no concessions to modern gaming in there, and the reviews actually reflected this for a change, and word got around really quickly that Ukulele was a bit of a dud, and it's failed to chart in the piracy charts.
Despite the fact that it's got no DRM.
Exactly. Ukulele released DRM free because it was on goodoldgames.com, and actually, although the developers of Ukulele did make 1 or 2 balls ups, particularly in the run-up to release, one of them was not selling out to put DRM in the title. So yeah, I guess the whole notion that if you don't have DRM, then your title is going to be massively pirated, that just doesn't hold water. The only games that are pirated are the games that people are interested in. Generally speaking, and I'm quoting from a book here, basically the only things that are pirated are the things that have already made it, that are already a success, that have already made money, I guess. And Ukulele, although I think it was it was only a success in terms of Kickstarter, I suspect it won't be considered a success in terms of retail sales because it's got around really quickly. And it's not like No Man's Sky in that regard, because No Man's Sky was a massive sales success because of pre-orders. DRM isn't going to prevent your game from being pirated. In fact, the only thing that is going to prevent your game from being pirated is if you make a bad game.
If you make a shit game.
If you make a Ukulele. Do let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Loads more at parallaxlive.com. We've got some really interesting... Do please hit the like and subscribe buttons, because we've got some really interesting piracy news coming up within the next few weeks. You don't want to miss it if you are at all interested in gaming and Denuvo DRM and the piracy scene in general. We've got some really interesting stuff coming up. Thanks ever so much for watching. We'll catch you guys in the next video.